Rutland County has close to the highest unemployment, if not. I'm not competing for such a sad story. We do have the highest foreclosure rate, I know that, and we have, according to several social studies, we have the highest incidence of all the social ills. So, in fact, it's not often that Rutland County, as I said in the application, gets the big shiny apple, but in the case of the Better Buildings grant and the opportunity that we were given, we got it. So we set out to use our existing strategy, which is a neighbor to neighbor. Some of my ideas were developed and have been informed by a wonderful study and a wonderful program called Bridges Out of Poverty, and I recommend it. Ruby Payne's work originally, and many others are following in her footsteps in their workshops all around the country. It's about communicating to people, the hard-to-reach people in particular. And the conclusion that I share in the time I have here, and it's a 2-day workshop that I highly recommend, but the conclusion is that among the skeptical, the resistant, and the fearful communities or individuals, the only trusted source for advice and aid is family and neighbors. Our population, the population we serve in particular, is not as likely to get their information from reading the newspaper. They're more likely to get their information from their neighbor who has experienced something for good or worse. So we have worked in this way for a very long time. Our first management strategy was also based on somebody else's work called the breakthrough approach. Charles Baum's presentation to Achieving Excellence at the Kennedy School of Government, and I'm here using some of his slides, so I'm providing the copyright information. His work, he said, is based on these two articles, Successful Change Programs Begin with Results, and a book called The Breakthrough Strategy. I selected some of these slides to show in this slide because they're just plain straightforward language, and they worked extremely well for us. The breakthrough strategy, by the way, is based on the idea that you take a small piece of your whole goal and you just go at it. It's addressing what the typical pitfalls for most change programs are. We've only got 3 years to do this enormously ambitious, to reach these enormously ambitious goals. If we sat around and got involved, we would experience too much process, no reinforcing results, things that would take forever, and things that would get lost among priorities. 1,000 retrofits in a county where the state only saw 600 before was certainly overwhelming to us. But we decided to take the breakthrough strategy and go to, as I'll explain, go to Shrewsbury. There we were deliberately seeding an early win. We were testing the innovations that we would need for a huge goal. We were testing on a small scale. We were answering that question, have you got any results? Again, I'm using his slides. We learn by doing, experiment, pilot new approaches, move into action quickly, rough and ready, see what it takes to get results. So this is what we did. I'm sorry, I'll come back to this one. What we did in Shrewsbury, Vermont, one of the small towns in Rutland County, we contacted the Shrewsbury Conservation Commission, a volunteer organization of 5 individuals. We asked them if they would be willing to contact every person in the town of Shrewsbury by phone, if they would ask those, let's see, I'm going to come back to these. If they would contact every Shrewsbury resident, ask them if they would like a home visit or an audit, explain the process. This was neighbor to neighbor, so in most cases the person making the phone call knew the person on the other end of the line. We got an enormous response the night of the phone-a-thon. It took place from 7 to 9 at night, and then followed up with people we hadn't reached that night or the numbers that we just didn't have time for. 172 people were actually spoken to out of 412 total households in the town. Within a few weeks, we had 47 audits scheduled. We have 9 retrofits in process, and of course, what's the potential for another 30 retrofits. And I will say, at this point in the process, we still don't know that final question of what kind of conversion rate we'll have from audit to retrofit. We were very pleased, as I say, with the results. We learned a lot of things from our sort of breakthrough strategy, our small goal towards our small project, a bite out of our huge goal. We learned that there are a lot of complaints that would occur. Funnily enough, people complained that they hadn't gotten a phone call. There were a couple of rumors that passed around we had to sort of deal with, and there's the usual, government is no good, government. What we did, of course, reinforce for ourselves is that timing is absolutely essential. If we said we were going to call, we better call, and we better call everybody within the same hour. Can't be done, but we did the best we could to control that. And when we heard a specific complaint, we were very determined to jump on it and respond quickly. Going under the column cannot control, we had new staff, and wouldn't you know, one staff member had to be out for a death in the family, and another staff member had to be out for an unusual happenstance in her pregnancy. So all of a sudden, best laid plans were laid low. And certainly a lesson, we knew that it was essential to provide the best possible quality service at this point, because everything depended on the reputation this program got at the beginning. If we lost confidence, if people lost confidence in us in the beginning, we'd never get it back. So we really had to hustle. Of course, the fact that we only had to hustle with the one town and the residents of a small group made it much easier for us to respond, but it made it absolutely imperative that we respond. We also learned that there were some weaknesses and some things to address among the contractors. They were stunned at having so much work so quickly. Some of them made mistakes. One contractor forgot to turn the heat on after doing a blower door test, and it was 16 below that night, and the customer had to call for an emergency assist in the middle of the night. And that happens. Nobody's going to avoid mistakes. There were some bad habits among the contractors. They're individuals. They don't have any or a lot of backup, and they didn't get reports back to us as soon as they had promised. And I think it would be generally agreed that, this is not an industry, and it's not particularly in Vermont, it's not an industry that's had a lot of investment until now. So they're undercapitalized. They lack equipment. They, I think, lack equipment and lack backup resources, particularly clerical in our case. On the other hand, there's no question they're doing the best they can with what they've got, and what needs to be addressed is what they've got and what they need. So it was clear for lessons learned that we needed to improve and help them improve some of their business practices and upgrade them as we went along. Certainly jobs and job development and industry development is part of our goal. As I say, we we found bottlenecks. The contractors were slow to submit their audit reports. We have found ourselves to be understaffed for returning the visits after the audit. And unfortunately for us, there's no guarantee yet that we'll convert those 25 or that we'll reach a rate of more than 25% of audits to retrofits, but we certainly believe we will, because what we have found is that in Shrewsbury, where we took this pilot program, people are talking, people are and I say that because when I go to the dump or when I go to the general store, everybody, when I walk into the room, is even talking about an audit or a retrofit. We learned that our loan product is simple and successful and easy to use, which is comforting. It's one area we probably don't have to go back right away with a great effort. We know that the Conservation Commission members are very proud of themselves, very, very pleased at the opportunity we gave them to do this for their neighbors. They were committed to this in the first place. They're pleased with their results, and they are offering to give testimonials as to the effect it's had on the whole town. And even before we know the final results for our goals. We know that the estimated savings for residents who have participated is already about 50% of they're saving already 50% on their heating bills. That's $764 a year. Just having that kind of testimonial or evidence to pass on to the others answers, I don't know if you remember in the slide earlier, that question, are there any results yet? This is only 6 months into the grant process that we have these results, and 3 months really into the Shrewsbury process, because we started the first part of October. We also know that we will be able to finish this project in Shrewsbury. The next steps for us, a big honking outreach plan. I don't know how else to say it. We're going to build on what we've learned from Shrewsbury. We have a media campaign. This is a picture of Vermont and where we work. We have a media campaign planned, and we know that we have to address organizational development. Our media campaign will really run concomitantly with our outreach plan. We've called ourselves the NeighborWorks Heat Squad, and you're seeing the logo. HEAT stands for Home Energy Assistance Team. We're not the only organization to use HEAT as an acronym, but it works for us. We've developed a new dictionary intended to be a simple way of talking and avoiding some sort of hot words. We don't use audit. We use assessment and a checkup. And in the case of retrofit, we call it an upgrade or home improvement. And those mean more things, and they avoid some sort of, hot words. In Vermont, we've just gone through property assessments for tax reasons, and we just don't want to talk about assessments, so we avoid that. We are going to use Vermont Public Radio to reach a certain more educated group of residents, because this program, by the way, is not limited to our low-income households. It happens that we're invited to write a monthly column in the Rutland Herald. The Rutland Herald is a Pulitzer Prize-winning, very local newspaper, but like all newspapers around the country, they've had to lay off their paid staff so that they're augmenting with guest columnists. And it wasn't our idea, but I would share that idea with others anywhere, that the journals are always looking for contributions. And we now appear monthly on a Saturday morning, and I don't understand it, but people actually read it and call us. Every Monday morning after a column has appeared, there's an enormous bump in phone calls to our agency.